Today we're taking a look at some pretty exciting developments coming out of Walt Disney World.
That's right. We're zeroing in on Magic Kingdom, specifically some news about a really major expansion that's been teased.
Yeah, there was a Disney Parks blog post recently. People magazine picked it up, giving us some fresh details.
Exactly. And that's our source material for today. Gives us a good look behind the curtain.
So our mission really is to unpack all of this, figure out what's actually coming, why these specific details are interesting, especially if you're, curious about theme parks and how they tell stories.
And the hints point towards Pixar's Cars, but maybe not in the way you'd expect. There's this term parkitecture floating around too.
Okay, parkitecture. We'll get to that. But first, the scale here. The sources are calling this part of the largest expansion in Magic Kingdom's history. That's big.
Huge. It really sets expectations, doesn't it? And location-wise, they're saying Frontierland.
Frontierland, okay. So not Tomorrowland, not Fantasyland, Frontierland.
Right. But it's not just like dropping Radiator Springs next to Pecos Bill. It's part of a bigger concept they're calling the Piston Peak National Park transformation.
Piston Peak National Park. Okay, so that's the theme.
From Cars.
Right, from the planes. Fire and rescue movie, technically, but definitely in that Cars universe. We first heard about a Cars attraction sort of vaguely back at D23 in August.
Right, the showcase. But this new blog post from June 3rd, that's where the meat is, the details.
That's the one. It paints a picture of this Piston Peak, describing it as an awe-inspiring wilderness filled with towering trees, snow-capped mountains, breathtaking waterfalls, roaring rivers, and impressive geysers.
Wow, so that's pretty epic. Almost like a real national park.
Well, that seems to be the point. The source says while it's fictional, Piston Peak is inspired by the real Rocky Mountains, the American frontier, that whole vibe, national parks.
So grounding the animated world in something tangible, historical almost. Exactly. And they mention you'll see places from the Cars world there, like the Visitor Lodge, the Ranger HQ, trails, all integrated into this natural setting.
Which brings us back to parkitecture. You said that was the architectural style?
Yeah, parkitecture. And it's not just a Disney buzzword, surprisingly. It's a real thing, developed by the National Park Service way back.
Oh, really? What's the idea behind it?
Basically, designing buildings that harmonize with nature. Think about those classic lodges in Yellowstone or Yosemite. Using local stone, wood, blending into the landscape.
Ah, okay, so they look like they belong there, not just plonked down.
Right. So using parkitecture here is a deliberate choice to make this Cars-themed area feel, more organic within this national park setting. It's about blending in.
Interesting. So less cartoon building, more rustic lodge that happens to have Cars characters nearby.
Something like that, yeah. It's a fascinating blend. And they even talk about how it'll connect visually to the rest of Frontierland.
How are they planning that?
Well, they mention using trees as natural barriers, sort of easing the transition, and things like rugged mountains being placed across the waterway from Grizzly Hall.
Oh, you're the country bears.
Right. And get this, they said the geysers from Big Thunder Mountain Railroad will actually seem to stretch into the trails of this new area.
No way. So they're tying existing landmarks into the new land sightlines. That's clever.
Yeah, really thoughtful integration. It's not just a separate bubble.
Okay, so scale, location, theme, architecture.
Yeah.
Let's talk rides. The source confirms 2 new Cars-themed attractions.
It does. And one is specifically called out as an off-road rally race.
An off-road race. Okay, now this is where the tech stuff comes in, right?
Yeah.
The source mentioned something about the ride vehicles.
Oh, yeah. This is pretty wild. They're apparently developing a completely new type of ride vehicle for this.
Why? What's so special?
Because, according to the source, it needs to do much more than just carrying you from one place to another. The goal is, and I'm quoting here, to create a car that conveys a feeling when you ride in it.
Conveys a feeling. Okay, unpack that. Like, not just bumps and turns, but an actual emotion.
That seems to be the ambition. Engineering a sensation, not just simulating movement. It's a different level of thinking about ride design.
How do you even start to do that? Engineer a feeling.
Well, the source gives some hints. They're using a customized production vehicle, like a real car covered in sensors.
Sensors everywhere, got it.
And they're driving this thing on a dirt track, gathering data on how it moves, how it feels, over bumps, turns, everything involved in that off-road experience.
So capturing the real physics and sensation.
Exactly. They want to take that data and turn that feeling we want into real-world engineering for the ride vehicle. It's translating sensation into code and mechanics.
And that is seriously next level.
It really is.
Yeah.
They mentioned Imagineers worked with a motocross company, even went to Arizona to drive on rocky terrain themselves.
Wow. Doing their homework.
Definitely seems like it. They want that authentic off-road feeling. And apparently, these details about the vehicle and the feeling goal were first mentioned by Pete Docter from Pixar and Imagineer Michael Hungen at SXSW back in March.
Ah, so it connects back to that future of world building panel.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
This tech sounds core to the experience.
Seems like it. It's not just a ride, it's an engineered experience.
Okay, so while all this cool future tech is being developed, what's happening now at the park? The source mentioned some construction impacts.
Yeah, practical stuff. Because of the work going on, the Rivers of America, Tom Sawyer Island, and the Liberty Square Riverboat are all closing temporarily starting July 7th this summer.
Good heads up for anyone planning a visit. Shows they're really getting into major construction there.
Definitely. And speaking of major, the source didn't just talk about the Cars land, it dropped another bombshell.
Oh, what else?
It teased that Imagineers are also working on the first ever land inspired by the Disney villains.
Whoa. Okay, a villain's land. That's been rumored for years.
Seems like it's actually happening. The source mentions 2 major attractions, dining and shopping, on a twisted grand scale located beyond Big Thunder Mountain Railroad.
Beyond Big Thunder. So near this new Cars area, wow. That whole section of the park is getting a massive makeover then.
It certainly sounds like this largest expansion involves more than just Piston Peak. The villains mention really underlines the scale of what they're planning back there.
Okay, one last thing.
Uh-huh.
How are they tying this Piston Peak, this Cars world, back to the rest of Frontierland, story-wise? It seems like quite a jump.
Yeah, the source addresses that. It says Piston Peak will continue the sweeping storytelling tradition that has crossed Liberty Square and Frontierland since the park opened.
How, though? What's the connection?
They frame it around heroic characters with a belief in themselves that helped forge a path to their dreams. So they're positioning the Cars characters, I guess, within that same sort of aspirational, pioneering spirit narrative that defines those lands.
Finding a thematic link, focusing on character spirit rather than literal theme. Okay, I can see how they're trying to weave it in.
It's about justifying its place within the park's established narrative, not just the geography.
Right, so let's try and wrap this up. What we're seeing is, well, huge. This largest expansion ever for Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, bringing the Cars universe into Frontierland, but through this very specific Piston Peak National Park concept.
So that parkitecture style aiming to blend everything into a natural, almost historical park setting.
And featuring some really groundbreaking ride technology focused on engineering a specific feeling, not just movement.
Plus the potential for a whole villain's land nearby, too. It's a massive transformation.
All while trying to connect it back to the park's core storytelling traditions. It's ambitious stuff.
Definitely. It makes you think, though, if they're focusing this much on blending architecture with nature, using parkitecture, and engineering ride vehicles to convey specific feelings, what does that open up for the future?
Yeah, what other stories could they tell using that combination? Where else could they take that blend of environment and engineered sensation?
What other feelings could they design into a ride? It's a fascinating direction for immersive experiences, isn't it?
Absolutely. Engineering emotion through place and motion could be where things are heading.